right, good evening, students. We are dedicating a week of classes as continuation of your course with missionary Steve Sullivan. We enjoyed 9 sessions with him, and we heard a lot of stories, really encouraging stories uh, from the mission field because they had been in the mission field for many years. And so, what we will be having in the next 3 days are the portions of your notes on introduction to missions and culture and missions strategy. I will be taking up the portions that have not been touched by our missionary Steve Sullivan. So your notes will be uploaded, you know where it is, in the lecture notes channel. Okay. Now you would say, what are my credentials in teaching missions? I wish I have more experience in the mission field, but my experience in working with missionaries as a pastor alongside Pastor Ray here in Destiny City Church, we have hosted a lot of missionaries. In fact, in the earlier years here in Rojas City, we had the opportunity to help missionaries, including Steve Sullivan. We have Rob Zimmerman and others who would come to be missionaries. And it has been upon me to give them orientation on the Philippine culture and helping them adjust to the Filipino culture. So somehow, through the years, I've learned the Western culture in a hands-on setting, how to deal with them and also helping them understand the Filipino culture. In fact, it has been very funny with the case of Steve and Jackie Sullivan um, because they were learning the Filipino culture and they are learning to live as among Filipinos. On our case, we are learning so much about the Western culture, accommodating them and them having to live with us, and feeding them with Western food. There was a time when I think both sides have adjusted so well that like, as a Filipino, I would know how Steve or Jackie would respond as an American, and Steve and Jackie also would know how I or Ray as Filipinos would respond or react to a situation. And there would be times sometimes that we have to stop. One time, Jackie and we were talking to one another, and we are just being open to some things that were happening. And we have to say this at the start. Okay, I would have to tell Jackie, okay, Jackie, let us talk. But are we talking as Filipinos or are we talking as Americans? Okay. And so sometimes as an American, she would hesitate and I would have to tell her, okay, Jackie, please don't hesitate to tell me because you can say anything as an American and I will not be offended because I will react to you in the Western way also. Okay. And there was also a time when I think Jackie reacted to me as a Filipino. Okay. And I have to go back and call her again. Hey, are you offended? Please be open. And so that we had fun sessions like that. And so if you would ask me what are my credentials in teaching missions, that's it. And also, Pastor and I had a chance really to be in Cambodia for, I think, more than a month when Cambodia first opened, and Steve and Jackie were there, and Warren was there also, and Jose Echebilia, and later on also Sir Fred Capapas, and it was really a life-changing experience for us, and we learned a lot. I had also the opportunity to go to Myanmar with Steve and Jackie, for a week and had an exposure in a Buddhist culture. So that's it, right? So this is what I'm covering today. Let me go to that now. I have so many things to click here. Okay, so that's what it is. Our course is Culture and Missions Strategy. I'll be focusing on this, where we ride on culture, okay, as a strategy for doing missions. We will not ignore it. We will not be afraid of the different culture of our target people, but we will ride on it as a vehicle through which we can do the job as missionaries and communicating the gospel to them. Okay? So, firstly, let's have this understanding and viewing culture. I know Steve uh, took up a portion of this to you, but I just want to talk about this in a more concrete way. Okay, here Christianity, culture, and the missionary's role. Now, the missionary must have a correct perspective of culture and Christianity because now you understand where I come from as your teacher. I always start with definitions and having the correct understanding because not having correct definitions and correct understanding of something we must do, that would lead us to doing it wrong. Okay? So let's have this correct understanding or perspective of culture and Christianity. All right. Wow. You like that drawing? I like that thing here. Here's the principle, class. Christianity is supra cultural in its origin and truth, meaning it's above culture, but it is cultural in application. Christianity, we Christians, we are citizens of heaven. The culture of God, remember, God wanted to have a people of His own. We are supposed to be a different kind of people, starting with what God did to the nation of Israel. He called the people unto Himself and had them to be taught with the Word of God because they are supposed to be trained how to live as God's people. And that's what Christianity is. That's what Christians are. We are supposed to have that Christian culture. But Christianity is above whatever culture we have. Say it is above the Filipino culture, and it is also above the culture of your target people, above the culture of the Muslims. Yet, however, Christianity is cultural in application. You know what that means? That Christianity can be practiced in the context of the culture you are in, or in the context of the culture of your target people. Okay? Christianity is above the Muslim culture, but Christianity will be applied in the context of the culture of Muslims. But Christianity is above the Muslim culture. That's what this means. Now, how is that? These are some principles that I want us to understand. That firstly, God as creator has ordained culture. He is the one who ordained culture. Okay? It says here in Acts 17:26 that from one man, He made every nation of men that they should inhabit the whole earth. And He, look at this, He determined the times and set for them and the exact places where they should live. So God did this so that men would seek Him and perhaps reach out to Him for Him and find Him, though He is not far from each one of us. Now, what does this verse tell us? You see, God is the one who made every nation. And God is the one that determined where people should inhabit. And also the times when they will live, the exact places where they would live. Now, did God mean that only a few people from a few nations would know Him? No. But rather it says here, He determined where people will live. He determined the times when they will live. But God says here, He did this so that men would seek Him and perhaps reach out for him and find him wherever they are, in whatever culture they are. Men could
Wala pa man
seek
sa
him
stream.
and they will find him there. Okay, is that, do you have a problem? Uh, can you see my screen? I think you should. Okay. Some tech people, kindly please help if there is anybody has a problem. For
Yes, I
our
already gave them the roles, yung mga kakapasok lang. Binigyan ko na kayo ng roles. Punta kayo sa
okay.
tech. I'll put it in the current channel yung links. Sa help and connectivity, yung mga nagreklamo, may roles
Mm.
na po kayo.
Wala na. Yeah. Yung ko ako din man kayo hindi makita. Okay. Shall we go on? So firstly, God as creator has ordained culture. Okay? So culture is nothing for us to be afraid of. Secondly, all right. Here, because of the entrance of sin, however, and of man's disobedience, God was not allowed to order the culture of men, and man has chosen to walk according to the course of this world as dictated by the prince of the world. He will say, but we have a problem because you see, I am in a different culture. I am in a Muslim culture. I'm in a Buddhist culture among my target people. And so they're doing so many wrong things and there are so many wrong cultural things. Well, why is that so? That is because of the entrance of sin. And God wasn't able to continue actually to order the ways of man. So man ended up having some wickedness and evil things in their culture because it was man's choice. Man has chosen to walk according to the course of this world. Okay? As Second Corinthians 4:4 says, that the God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. So, yes, culture was originated by God, but the entrance of sin has brought a lot of problems and sinful practices in the culture of men. Therefore, we say here that all cultures need transformation in motivation or in content. So cultural customs and practices all over the world serve the selfish and idolatrous tendencies and drive man away from God. Cultures need transformation. And how do we do that? Our basis is the mandate of Christ. You know, the Great Commission. The Christian mandate requires that missionaries teach men to observe all that Christ has commanded. Because you see, the essence of sin is disobedience to God's command. Men have lived in disobedience to God. That is why the Great Commission is a commission to teach people to obey, to go back obeying and living according to what God wanted. And that is the essence. And you know, we have just finished our course in teaching to cost learning. And we said that the Great Commission practically is a teaching commission. We are supposed to teach people to obey what God has commanded because they have to be taught to obey so they become the kind of people that God wanted. So in doing this, we see that the missionary touches the culture of the target people. So in the first place, he cannot communicate without concerning himself with the culture. We are there mandated by God. We are there to change cultures, whatever is to be changed or transformed in the cultures of our target people. But so we cannot communicate without concerning ourselves with their culture. Remember number 5 principle here that only Christ can heal cultures. Missionaries, we are not supposed to heal cultures. We cannot heal cultures of men that had been tainted with sin. It is when what Christ did was to take people's lives in his hands and reestablish the distorted and deteriorated, filling each word, each practice with a new meaning and direction, and the direction that God has ordained for man in the beginning. He is God, the healer, the restorer. So here, number 6 principle we see here, the missionary comes in as God's agent of that healing. Do you like that, missionaries? God ordained culture. Culture was destroyed and tainted with sin. So culture needs transformation. We cannot transform culture. Only Jesus can transform culture. But the role of the missionary is you are God's agent of the healing of man's culture. You as missionary, you serve as catalyst and source of new ideas and information to change so that people will experience the greatest fulfillment with God within their own culture. Yes, healing in his hands. All right. So let's look at this now. The missionary as an agent of change. Okay? An agent of change. In this task, history have recorded, class, that some missionaries had been accused. Okay? The accusation is this, that missionaries are destroyers of culture. This is due to some historical events. You know, there had been record, if you want to research, class, on the works of some early missionaries, not only Christian missionaries, but even Catholic missionaries trying to spread Catholic religion. Okay. There had been some historical records of events where missionaries or, missionary agencies, they can be Christians or they can be other religions, they would go to a different culture and they would literally destroy what the culture, all representations of the culture of their target people. They would burn down books, libraries, handiworks, mga artifacts, things that were treasured by their target people. And so that has been the accusation. Now, this is due to that some of those historical events resulting from the point, these actually are pointing from the point of view that all other cultures other than the missionaries is evil and wicked and hence must be eradicated. Now, we have a lot of the MIs here. You had been immersed. You help us out here, MI missionaries. You had been immersed already in the Muslim culture. And I believe you have had a sufficient level of acquaintance to the Muslim culture. Would you say that the entire culture of the Muslims are wicked and everything must be eradicated? We want some answers from you. You can type in. You help us out here. Okay? No. Okay, how about answers from our MI students? Because you are there. You had already been immersed. Would you say that everything about the Muslim culture is wicked and therefore must be totally eradicated? No. Yeah, no, okay. Yes. Okay. Val Ryan says no. Okay. That's what it means. No. Okay? But that's the accusation. So as agents of change, We are not there to eradicate, the culture of our target people in its entirety. But rather here, the record also shows that missionaries as agents of change, history have proven, that missionaries actually have brought about positive changes. Missionary work have brought about many positive changes like, the elimination of destructive cultural practices such as cannibalism, widow burning, infanticide, and tribal warfare. Oh, some of these class are even true here in the Philippines. Huh? And this had been eradicated. Yes, thank you for that, Percival. No, ma'am. Percy says many of their cultures are not in contradiction with God's word. Okay. Thank you for that. I think I should put that on record as an answer to my question. No, right? We are not supposed to totally eradicate. Okay. So, here, we're saying that as agents of change, missionaries, history have shown that they have brought about so many changes, such as the elimination of these inhumane practices of cannibalism, widow burning, infanticide, and tribal warfare. And on the positive side, missionaries have brought about the introduction of educational practices, medical care, sanitation measures, and new technology that raise the standards of living of their target culture. But of course, Steve, in his sessions, have made this very clear. Missionaries can do these things. In fact, like from the story of Steve and Jackie, when they first came to Cambodia, they were able to enter in as project directors. They built orphanages and schools, but that's not what the missionary is out there primarily. Okay, those were access ways to get into the target culture, but what they were doing were also valid, but they are not being swayed away from the main thing, which is the communication of the gospel. Now, we will have that later on in this class. Okay. Now, also, missionaries as agents of change, they are not there to eradicate the culture of the target people, but rather to bring about positive change. And they are there for what we call non-selfish purposes. Because the positive changes that Christian missions have brought about are in contrast to what other forces that try to shape cultures for their own purposes. And history class records these: communism, capitalism, and secular humanism. These are all efforts, of so-called people who are supposed to bring change in culture. But what they brought about is for their selfish purposes and ambitions. But that is not what a missionary is, who is there for change as God's agents of change. I want us to read this beautiful line by David Hasselgrave, the author of the book Communicating Christ Cross-Culturally. He said that Christianity is the only world force which has at the heart the preservation of the best in human cultures. Remember, at the beginning we said it was God that ordained culture. It was God that determined where people will live, in what nation they will live, in what times they will live. And there in their culture, they will have ways to know the Lord. And so the missionary should never even think that his own culture is above the culture of his target people. We are there as agents of God's change to preserve the best of the human cultures, and within that culture, God will give you wisdom how to communicate the gospel. Okay, so that is our concern in this course. Culture as missions strategy, specifically in communicating the gospel. Okay. So let us have a quick review. Steve has taken up portions of this with you, but let's just have a quick review of what culture is. All right. A missionary's work involves contact with another culture. So, understanding what culture is becomes necessary. Right? So, I don't know from where you are coming, class, but probably you can tell me, just type in very quickly, what other culture have you been in contact with for some good amount of time? Okay, I know, like MI, you've been in contact with the Muslim culture. Okay, I just want to know what kind of students I have. Are there some more? Oh, okay, Kisaya, Koreans. Okay, yeah, Muslim, Turkey. Wow, Doctora, you've been to Turkey, huh? For how long? Let me see. Let me see. Who are you here? What are my students? We have Koreans, we have Muslims, Japanese. Okay, Maibel, you have worked in Japan? Okay, Ark is also Japanese. I know, yeah. That's a good experience, Ark. Chinese and Japanese people, Korean. Subanen culture. Okay. What is that Subanen culture, Daisy? Ilocano. Yeah, even here in the Philippines, Ilocano, Ilonggo. Yeah, being exposed to the Ilocano culture when we went to SOS in the Ilocano area, where one of your classmates come from. That was really a cultural adjustment for us. Okay. One of the native tribes here in Mindanao. Mm-hmm. So anyone else here had been exposed to other cultures? So far I've been with Khmer and Myanmar. Steve would call it Myanmar. Myanmar. Okay. Thai. All right. So most of you dito yata mahilig sa mga maanghang na mga pagkain, ano? Okay. Okay, based in paganism, yes, and animism. Okay, so that must be really different. Okay. Okay, Thai and Khmer. Yeah, I know, Doctora, because your son is working in Cambodia, right? Okay, so somehow, okay, we have Indonesians. Yeah, I remember I'd been to Indonesia also, and it's a very, very, very near to the Filipino culture. They look like us, the Indonesians, actually. And they have a lot of words in their dialect that are the same, like payong, I think kamay, something like that. Right. Okay, that's good to know where you are from. That? Jalan. Tausog. Okay. Oh, Wilson, you are with the Tausogs. Okay. How about Igorots? I remember we had SOS teams going up to Baguio, and they entirely have a different culture. I had fun with some exposures to the Igorot culture. We had some students also who were Igorots, and that's been nice. So you see, it's how did you feel, class, being exposed to a different culture? Okay, Yakan and Samal Bajau. All right. How did you feel? Come on. How did you feel? You tell me. What was your what was can you give a word to describe how you felt? Privilege, it was hard. Yeah. You feel like you're an alien. Surprised, strange. Yes. Yeah, you tried to compare your culture with theirs. All is new. What are they talking about? Okay, challenging. All right, that is good. Maranatha, the most rich among the Muslim tribes. No culture shock a bit. Okay, the language barrier was difficult. Really, yes, that's true. You want to say a lot, but you cannot say anything. That's very difficult. All right, so you somehow, as a class here, many of you have had that exposure, as that's how it is. And so you can imagine when you really become a missionary in a different nation with a totally different culture, very far from the Filipino culture, what you are saying here now, that difficulty, that challenge, feeling alien that you are saying it here, class, probably you multiply that, say, 100 times when you'll practically be there now in a different culture. Okay? So I just want you to begin to imagine. The Korean man ko mag-English. Alright. Ilonggo Aklan, Rumakapis, Ayam Cebuano. Teves, okay. Teves, you're Cebuano, but now you enter Ilonggo, right? That is why we have to speak in English here in Beruyan. Okay, so as I was saying, that's the feeling. I really wanted you to recall that feeling. Okay, and as I have said, if you find yourself eventually now immersed in a totally different culture in another nation, whatever you have expressed here, multiply that many times over. Okay? Hindi ako makakawa ng jokes. Kawawa ka dyan, Regine. All right, let's move on now. So what is culture? So culture is that complex whole which involves what? Knowledge, belief, art, morals, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. So it is a complex whole of many things. Like, what is the Filipino culture? So you see, you cannot even, the Filipino culture is, and so you begin to think about the songs we sing, the dance that we dance, the food that we eat, our manners, our customs, our traditions. It's because it is a complex whole of many, many things that involves, an individual and a society, okay? And they have acquired them as a group of people, and collectively they do that and have characterized that as their culture. Or here's a second one, the simpler way of saying it. Culture is a way of life, the total plan for living of a social group. It's like, a group of people, class, they already have a plan for living. That's their way of life. They wake up in the morning. They don't have to think whether am I going to do this or not. Okay? It's their way of life. It's ingrained in them. That's their total plan for living of a social group or of a people, of a nation. And so if you are a stranger, you go to another nation, you wake up the first day you are there, and you find yourself in a totally different plan how to spend your day. I remember when we went to Dubai. I have never been so confused in my life, class, in my mind and even my body, because actually we just arrived from Australia, and I think we just had a couple of days. We didn't have time to go back to the Filipino time. And then we flew to Dubai. And so our body didn't have time to adjust. And the time there is also almost different. And I tell you, I really got so confused. I didn't know whether it's morning or afternoon or noontime. And, immediately after leaving the Western culture in Australia, and then we were immersed into the Muslim culture in Dubai. That was really confusing because you wake up into a setting where the way of living is different. People just do their thing. That's what they do. That's their way of life. But there you are, a stranger, and you cannot keep up. You cannot be in step, with them. Thirdly, definition of culture. Culture is that which binds a society together and gives it a sense of identity, dignity, security, and continuity. The keyword here, class, is that culture binds the people together. That what makes them, that's their identity. That is why you don't just destroy this without thinking about, there's some good part of their culture that gives them identity. You destroy that, you're destroying the people, and they will resist you. For them, perhaps to you as a missionary, they're doing some wicked things, but from their point of view, what they do in their culture is what gives them dignity, their sense of importance, and their continuity. And so that's important to them. And number 4, culture is the core and the driving force of a civilization, both ancient and modern. So we have learned in Hebrew history that was really a miracle that Israel, after having been in captivity for 70 years, and they were scattered, in the kingdom of Babylon, firstly Assyria and then Babylon, pagan religion. But when God restored them back to their land, they were able to go back, rebuild their nation, but most importantly, their culture as a people, their culture that was based on what God taught them in the scriptures during the time of Moses. Remember the theological period at the foot of Mount Sinai. So you see, class, here that culture is very important to a people. Let's look into the nature of culture. The cultures are often a mix of good and bad. Okay? It's a mix of good and bad. Remember, because we said originally it was ordained by God, but because of the entrance of sin. Because man is God's creation, some of his culture is rich in beauty and goodness. But because he is fallen, all of his culture is tainted with sin, and some of it is even demonic. Okay? Yes. Number 2, a culture has a present tense and a past tense. Customs and traditions are the past of the culture, like the enduring folk songs, the dances, and the costumes. But looking at the present, we see individuals and even societies in a state of flux or change, losing or gaining in the struggle for individual and collective development. Meaning culture, class, can be changed or can be transformed. Okay? And I think the Filipino culture is a very good example to that, because we are a captured nation. Several nations with different cultures actually captured us. And so the original Filipino culture have undergone a lot of changes. So a culture has present and past tense depending on what forces to which that culture had been exposed to. But the unchanging parts of a culture are the customs and traditions. That is why we have the songs and the dances that we have in the Philippines. So culture has permanent and changing aspects. Here, the presuppositions, these are the unchanging foundational concept within the culture itself and in the minds of the people. Okay? And values are the ideals within a culture that change, either upgraded or downgraded, depending on the factors that brought about the response. Okay? Number 4, nature of culture, culture and religion. You see, many cultural practices are actually deeply rooted in religious thinking. That is why mostly this is where we make the mistake, because a lot of the not so biblical aspects of a culture are actually ingrained in their religious practices. Okay. So it is not often easy to distinguish between cultural and religious. So for example, here in the Philippines, cultural feasts are also religious feasts. That is why, in the Philippines, panahon ng fiesta, they call it cultural feast. But it is also a religious feast because it is also the time that they offer their cultural activities to their patron saints. Okay? So that's the nature of culture. So let's look at this. What are some of the good or the bad and even demonic aspects of our culture? We're talking about the Filipino. Yeah, the ati-atihan. Or what aspects of our culture are we beginning to lose? Let's look at this. Let us not criticize other cultures. Let's look at this because culture has some of its bad aspects. Sa ating mga Pilipino, what are some of our bad or even demonic aspects of our culture? Okay, quickly, just answer me. Okay, type in there what you want. Can't type. Idolatrous. Pistami na tayo. Dali na lang next week. Aswang Festival. Yeah, alam mo Vicky, I fought for that. Kaya hindi yan natuloy sa atin dito sa Rojas. Okay, we have the Pistami na tayo. Dinagyang. Oh, that's very cultural. Supposedly, dinagyang is supposed to be just a cultural, kaya lang ginawa nilang religious, di ba? Birthday mo, Regine. Nako, pista minatay. Okay, this is another mascara, okay? Daga kung may house blessing. Yeah, that one is good or bad really or demonic. Okay, sinadya sa halaran. That is supposed to be sinadya lang, Karina. Sana ginawa lang yan na cultural, hindi na ginawang religious, ano? Alright, so you know that. Sinulog. Mapaubularyo dayon kung hindi mag-ayo ang sakit. Okay, that's part of the culture. Alright, now let's go to number 2 question. Okay, the second question here is, what aspects of our culture are we beginning to lose? And what new ones are we acquiring? And what forces or factors help in bringing about that change? So, mag-type in ka ng kung anong nag-change sa ating culture. And then put a dash and then put also the force that brought in that change. Okay, do you understand me? The second question, what change have you seen in our culture? Anything that we have lost or anything new that we have acquired? And then you also tell what force or factor brought about that change. Okay, let's have that. Let me get your answers. All right. What is that? So we are losing this pagmamano, fist bump. Ang nag Okay. Ang nagkuha nito ay pandemic. Yes, Dr. Potasio says adapt the Western culture. We lost the respect for elders. Okay? Pagsasabi ng po at opo. Bakit nawawala na yon? Ano ba yung nag-bring about ng ganyang change? Being respectful to the elders. Children are disrespectful nowadays. Okay? Filipino time. Due to increase of foreign jobs available here in Philippines. Okay? At yung palagi tayong late, hindi na. Yeah, we're losing that. Eating together as a family, what do you think brought about that change? Yes, humility and respect is brought about by entitlement, People they feel they're entitled to something. It's the me first culture, okay? Harana, marupok, chat ligaw na ngayon. Okay, technology has brought about change. Close family ties, okay, replaced by individualism. Okay, Flora, sa All Saints Day, wala na daw nag-offer ng food for the dead. Wala na nagluluto ng biko. Okay. Using upuan po, being conservative in dressing up, very liberated na gid cause of the influence of Western culture, influence of media or social media, childhood games, online games, and technology. Yan ang na-acquire na natin. Okay? The new generation is not that religious anymore. Then patriotism is weakened because of social media. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Children are calling their parents now with their first name. Yeah, Americans would call American kids would call their parents with the first name. Neglecting marriages, ma'am. Though hindi na siya that important as before. Or wala na lang kasal. Yun ba ibig mong sabihin? Counting period in the Philippines from years to weeks na lang. A courting period. Oh. Okay. Live in is in. Yeah. All right. Diri ma'am sa mga Subano, always may biko basta birthday. Okay, Daisy. Okay. Kapanghamot na ang biko. Live in muna daw. Trial and error. Bayanihan. Wow. We're losing the bayanihan also. Mga concrete ng bahay. Yeah, that's funny, Arnel. Hindi na ma-transfer yung mga bahay, ano? Hindi na bahay kubo. Hindi na daw makwat ang... Okay. Don't observe pamahiin ng mga new generation. Nagapanilig na sa burol kag kaon pakwan. Yeah, remember we have a den. We cannot sweep the floor. There are just so many pamahiin na. Yeah, so many have changed really. Pamalayi. Wala na ba pamalayi, doktora? Elope na lang. Pangabit. Pagid mama. Nag-give mga tao to do it here. Okay, pangabit. Okay, having number 2 and number 3. Okay, so you're having fun here. So, you begin to look at these things that you have. Na hindi maligo, pwede ko may patay. Okay, you look at all these things, class. It could have been good, if the changes in culture meant, the change or the removal of the unbiblical practices. But sadly, sometimes change in our culture is not a progress, but regressing, like some family values that we are losing. So that's what is the nature of culture, class. See, culture has its aspects that can be changed. Okay? Where is that? Okay. Especially the ideals. Because values are the ideals within a culture that change, either upgraded or downgraded depending on the factors that brought about the response. And in what you have typed in, you mentioned about, influence of other cultures, social media, technology, and all those things have influence. And it would have been good if values in a culture would be upgraded rather than downgraded. That is why, as missionaries, you will be there, class. As agents of change, you will not be there to destroy or to downgrade, and your target people have to understand that. But at the start, they will not understand that you meant them well. You meant them good. So we just have to learn how to be agents of change because you are there to upgrade their culture. And the best upgrade is, to have the biblical culture. So we will learn how to do that. Now, another way to understand the culture is the to look at cultures, class, as layers. Studying culture of a target people is no simple thing. So where do we start? Because we mentioned earlier on that culture is a complex mix of many things, okay, of a society. The songs they sing, the food they eat, how they dress up, their belief system, their value system. So it's a mixture, a complex mixture of so many things. So you are here now as a missionary. Where do you start? Okay? Where do you start if you want to understand the culture of your target people? So one helpful method is to visualize several successive layers of understanding as one moves into the real heart of the culture. So culture, class, can be seen as layers, as in layers. You know what an onion is? An onion is, it has layers. You have the outer layer and then the second layer. As you peel off the first layer, you go to the second layer. And so culture is something like that. It has 4 layers. Okay? The first layer. Okay? So this is the outer layer and the most superficial layer of what a foreigner would observe. So imagine yourself, you are a missionary and you have just landed. Your airplane have just landed in your target nation. I remember that when Helen and I landed in Mandalay in Myanmar. No, where was that? Myanmar. Okay, Burma, right? In Mandalay. And you have that feeling, you get off the airplane, okay, and you are in a different culture. And if you are a newcomer in a different culture, class, what you will see first of all is this first layer, the behavior. That's what you see first. The behavior answers this question: what activities are happening? What is done by the people? So the missionary should be keen to observe some patterned way of doing things, which binds the people together and gives them a sense of identity and continuity. Okay, so I will just start here. I just give a few examples. First time we went to Japan. Okay. Sa Sa airport pa lang, class. I mean, hindi pa kami nakalabas. Right? Parang okay pa kasi naglabas kami sa aeroplano, kasama namin yung mga Pilipino. Okay? And then we went through the customs and everything, and we began to get into the outer part of the airport. And then trouble started because I bump with so many people because I walk in the wrong way. Where do they stand? I ride the conveyor, the elevator, and I would stand in the wrong side. Okay, and then we went to the train. we rode the train, the bullet train, class, and we were so ignorant, and we didn't know. I remember it was me, Pastor Ray, and another couple. We had our suitcases with us. We didn't realize that we have to make we have a ticket, but we didn't know that our ticket, because it wasn't a reserved seat. We were not supposed to. Wala kaming seat number. Akala namin yun lang pag nag-stop na yung train ay bigla lang kami sasakay ng isang carrier. Di pag hinto, akyat kami kaagad. And when we were in there, and we were so happy because there were not too many in the one carrier. And so we sat down. And then after a while, the train police went to us and talked to us. We didn't understand him, but he was signaling to us to leave our seats and go. He was pointing us to go, move. And so we have to drag our suitcases. I tell you, class, the whole train, I think it were 13 carriages. And we had to drag our suitcases to the last one because It's only later on when we were in the hotel we understood that because we didn't have seat number, we are supposed to occupy that last carriage. I tell you, it was so difficult, and the four of us were very noisy, and everybody was very silent. I realized that that was being rude for us to talk in the train because in the evening when we were finally in our hotel, Facebook would give us some hints. There would be some automatic posts that would come up in my Facebook account. If you are new to Japan, these are the things that you should learn. But we were just behaving as Filipinos. But what we saw is that they were behaving differently. They were so quiet. They were standing in the wrong side. I thought they were standing on the wrong side and I was in the right side. And so all of that, what you see is behavior. And as a missionary class, because what you will normally see as behavior will be mostly opposite to your behavior. And then you will be tempted to judge the target culture as wrong. And you say, what? What are these people? Okay. These people are wrong. Okay. I happened actually, there was last a Vietnamese Peace Corps that was here in Rojas City. But, she was Vietnamese by blood. But she grew up in America. Okay, so she really was in a difficult situation because she was American in culture, but she was Vietnamese in face. Okay, and she is here in the Philippines. And she was behaving as an American, but the Filipinos look at her as a Vietnamese. And in our history, Filipinos are not so welcoming with Vietnamese people because of what they did in during the war. Okay? And she was a Peace Corps assigned to train the supervisors in the Department of Education here in Rojas City. And she was young. And she would go to the office in DepEd here, wearing, jeans with holes and riding a bike and wearing rubber slippers. She would go to DepEd and she is supposed to train, these very prim and proper principals and supervisors. And I think Teresa would understand what I mean. And these principals and the supervisors would not listen to her. And she would be angry and she would fight them. Okay? Well, because both parties were observing only the behavior. The supervisors, didn't respect her position as a trainer because they were judging her because of the way she carried herself. She was Vietnamese in face and she was wearing jeans and because she was behaving as a Western. Okay. And then this poor Vietnamese girl, was judging also these DepEd supervisors, and they were old and they were stiff and they were disrespectful, and they were very traditional. And so I happened to meet her at a grocery store. I was next to her in line where we were paying my groceries. And I struck a conversation with her, and that's when she learned. I talked to her, and she said, "Can I talk to you?" I said, "Okay, you can go to the house." And she went to the house, actually, class the next day, and I ended up mentoring her, okay, because she had this problem. She was judging everyone. She said, "Mrs. Calusay, what is wrong with the people here in Capiz? Everything here is wrong." That's what she said when she came to the house. And so that was her error, because the first layer of the first layer of culture is behavior. And let us be careful not to immediately judge our target people by the things that we see, by the activities that are happening, because we are in a different culture, those things that are happening are mostly different from what we are used to in our own culture. Okay, so I'll stop here because my time is over. We will continue on with this tomorrow. Uh, yes? Please read the article that I posted in, where is that? Readables channel. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm having a senior. Yeah, thank you, Regine. Readables channel. Okay, thank you for participating. I hope you had fun tonight. Yeah? Yes. Let us have fun as you participate. God bless you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good night, everyone.